If you've clicked on this video, I'm assuming you already have an interest in getting involved with research. So instead of wasting time describing to you why I think publishing or getting involved with research is important, we're just going to skip to talking about my experience and lessons from publishing myself and help you get from no research experience on your CV all the way to presenting at conferences and writing your first paper. And to introduce myself, hi, I'm Ishan. I'm a third-year medical student at UCL and I share my life on YouTube. So if videos like this are interesting to you, then do hit subscribe. But otherwise, the reason I'm making this video is because I recently published my work in a PubMed index journal and also presented at an international conference. And I found the whole process of getting onto a project so difficult. And I want to try and make it easier for you guys. So I'm sharing everything I know. But again, I'm no expert at this, and I do want to mention that there were many degrees of luck involved in this entire process, but there was also a lot of persistence and hard work. So if you're not willing to put either of those things in and you want this easy, then this video isn't for you. But I'm definitely not trying to prescribe an exact formula for how to get a publication. This is just my experience and what has worked for me. So with that out the way, here are the 3 basic steps you need to take in order to publish your first paper. Number 1, finding a supervisor. Number 2, working on the project itself. And number 3, actually presenting and publishing. So let's start right from the beginning with step number 1, which is finding a good supervisor. Now, this step is the hardest part of the entire process, but also the most important, because if you can find a good supervisor, then the rest of the process becomes a lot easier. So I'll just tell you my story. If we rewind back to me in second year, the one thing I really wanted was a publication. I realized that publications are important, and I made it my mission that I wanted a publication and I wanted it really badly, and I wasn't going to stop until I found one. So I did what every single medical student does, which is to email a bunch of doctors and essentially beg them to put me on a project. Now, this didn't work for 2 reasons. First of all, it took me so long to get any response in the first place. For every 100 emails I sent, I got about 2 responses. And the few responses I did get, even if I was invited to join a project, fizzled out super quickly because no team was actually invested in me as a medical student, as I had no rapport with them. And with the dozens of bits of admin that you have to do to get someone onto a research project, it just basically got left behind. And also, these emails I was sending really weren't so compelling. All I was saying is, I have no experience and I have no skills, but you should take me on your research team anyway. So at this point, I was like, okay, I know what I've done wrong. I don't have any skills. So I'm gonna do some courses, build my skills, and then try again. So I found a course on critical appraisal, I found a course on stats and AI, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do these courses and then we'll see what happens. And then here's the second thing I did wrong, and this was a massive mistake. Because I was like, you know what, I'm doing courses anyway to improve my research skills, why don't I join one of those courses that basically teach you a skill related to research, like how to do a meta-analysis, and also put you on a project that gets published as well. So win-win, I get my skills and I get my publication and I'm happy. This course costed £700, and that was with a discount. And that paper still hasn't been published. Now, of course, I learned a few skills and I contributed to the paper, but you should be doing all of this without paying £700. So essentially, joining that course taught me a very expensive lesson, which is don't pay for courses that teach you research skills. Instead, find a supervisor who is willing to do it for free, and they're all out there, and I'm about to tell you how you can do it. All right, so here's the good stuff. For the first way that you can go about finding a supervisor is to go through student-led societies. So one example is Acamedics that run all across the UK in different medical schools. And essentially what they do is they match you up with a supervisor who's already got a project running. And that way you don't waste time emailing a bunch of doctors and waiting to see what sticks. And essentially anyone can apply even if you don't have any research experience beforehand. So it's the perfect thing to get your first publication. Now, I've joined an Acamedics project this year, but to actually get onto the project which got published recently, I went through a completely different route. So at this point, emailing wasn't working, the course wasn't due to start for a few months, and I didn't know about Acamedics at the time. And at this point, I also wanted to explore different specialties and see what I was interested in learning about anyway. So there was this one lecture that we had, and I was really impressed by how simply the lecturer explained the eye. All the anatomy, all the pathology, but very simplified. And he was also our year 2 lead. So I was like, you know what, this guy's kind of interesting. Maybe I should find out more about him. So I did the obvious thing. I Googled him, I found his website, and while scrolling on his website, I found a typo. Now, I'm not saying you have to find supervisors who have typos in their websites, but essentially this became an easy way that I could email him and basically say, look, there's a typo on your website. I thought I'd point it out. but also if I could hang out with you in surgery or in clinic, that would be awesome. I'm interested in finding out more about ophthalmology. And essentially some old year medical students told me that anytime you ask for opportunities, you should just put your CV in the email as well. And because this was such a simple and easy ask, he was very happy to help. So I went and joined him in clinic, and we spoke about a bunch of different things, and we talked about his research interests, and essentially he told me he was making some patient education materials and he needed someone to help with videography, and that was something that was mentioned in my CV. And I was like, you know what, I'll get involved with it. It's not a research project, but it'll be something interesting to do. I'll learn more about ophthalmology, and also it might be something I can mention in my CV anyway, so why not? But then this sort of started to fizzle off a little bit, but in the meantime, he basically brought up how he wanted to assess the patient education materials on social media. And again, social media is something that I was interested in. So he was like, would you be interested in getting involved with the project and writing up the paper? And I was like, yes, this is literally what I've been wanting to do for so long. Let's do it. So yeah, that was it. There might have been a bit of a long story, but essentially that covers how I went from someone who didn't have a supervisor to finding someone who took me on for their project. And then we got started with the project between the summer of year 2 and year 3. Okay, brilliant. So that first part of the video covered how to find a supervisor. And I'm assuming if you use those tips and have sufficient perseverance, you will also be able to find a project and a good supervisor to work with. So this next part of the video is going to be all about working on the project. And the two things I want to discuss are building a team and working with a team on the research project, and secondly, how to make the most of the full experience. Okay, so the first thing to note is that when it comes to research projects, it's all about teamwork. There's multiple members of the team that are working together to get the project to completion. So if you can build a good team that has people that communicate well, are reliable, and also work hard and have similar goals to you, you're going to find that the project runs its course much better than a poorer team. Now, personally, I got really lucky with this. I picked 2 of my friends to join me on the project. One of them is actually presenting the work at a conference this weekend. But honestly, it is just about picking people that you trust and you think can deliver on the work that you need to do. Now, secondly, let's talk about how to make the most of the opportunity once you have a project underway. Now, of course, this is highly dependent on what you want to get out of the experience, but I think there's 3 things that every person that's on a research project can gain out of it. The first are research-specific skills. Then secondly, it's personal development. And finally, it's actual research output, which is what you're probably looking for, presentations and publications. Now, the research-specific skills are amazing. You get to learn all about how to actually conduct a research project, write up a paper in its entirety, analyze other papers that are out there in literature, and finally, select and conduct the appropriate stats to help you actually find results for your study. And I think learning these skills through doing an actual project are so much better than just doing a random course, because through the project, you actually get to see real world examples of where your skills are being applied. But another massive benefit of working towards a publication are the huge opportunities for personal development. There were so many times during the entire project where I had no idea what I was doing, and I basically just had to figure out what to do, move in a direction, and then afterwards ask for advice of whether I've done the right thing. And this would be one piece of specific advice to anyone that's watching this. If you're working on a project, instead of just blindly asking your supervisor for help or for pure guidance on what to do, instead think of what you should be doing in the first place, do that thing, and then ask for feedback on it, because that shows much more initiative. And more often than not, you should trust your gut, because you probably do know what you're doing, since you're the most invested person in this project. And finally, the amount of discipline you build through doing something like this is invaluable. Because it's completely optional, you have to set deadlines yourself, and no one's actually forcing you to do the work. So you kind of have to pace yourself accordingly and figure out the timeline all by yourself. And now, of course, every bit of research is so different, so everyone's gonna have a different experience and learn different things. But if you dive headfirst and actually just put a lot of effort into what you're doing, you will get the most amount out of it. And now, if you're watching this video and you're working on a project, you probably want to present it and get it published. And the most important thing is to be open with your supervisor and communicate that with them, because that way they'll be able to help you through that process and make sure you get that outcome, because it isn't easy. Okay, so moving on to part 3, which is actually publishing or presenting your work. There's a few pitfalls that happened, and I just want to share what I learned from that process as well. So first of all, when it came to presenting at conferences, we applied to 4 different meetings, but only got accepted at 3. And that's just part of the game. Sometimes your work isn't a right fit for that conference, and that's completely okay. And secondly, when it came to publishing, we applied for a journal, it got rejected at that journal. That happens as well. We applied to a different journal, went through the entire process. Now, that process is so long because there are peer reviewers who look through your work and basically make sure that it's 100% okay. It talks about all the limitations of the work, and also it covers all the points that they think are important. And once the peer reviewers are fully happy, then it gets published. So there are loads of hurdles along the journey, even after you've completed the project, when it comes to the admin of presenting and publishing. But if you persevere, you'll be completely fine. If you can write the project itself, you can most definitely do the admin bit at the end. But most importantly, it's such a rewarding experience. You get to actually work on projects that change the course of science and also change the lives of patients. And of course, once you have your first publication underway, it's much easier to get the other ones because you've actually got proof that you have the skills under your belt. So I believe that covers pretty much everything that I've learned between not having a supervisor all the way to publishing and presenting my work. Of course, there are so many different people that have different experiences. So if you have published any work before, do let me know in the comments and share how you managed to do that. But again, as I mentioned, this was my specific experience, and hopefully it gives you some insight for something you might be able to do, and maybe you don't make the same mistakes that I did, especially early on in that process. And if you enjoyed this video or found it valuable to any extent, then please do leave a like below and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And of course, if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments. I will try my best to answer them. But yeah, that was how I published as a medical student, and see you next time.